My name is Koka Sexton. I do appreciate you taking the time today to join us at the Digital Growth conference. My voice is going to be going in and out, so please apologize. I do apologize for that. But I am joined today with two amazing speakers, and today we're going to talk about the skills of the modern sales team. So first, I want to get a quick introduction from Tim. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know what you do.
Thanks, Koka. Hey, welcome everybody. My name's Tim Wackel, based here in Dallas, Texas today. I apologize that we don't have a video feed working, but I'm a sales trainer, keynote speaker, and executive presentation coach. And with that, I'd like to kick it up to Omaha, Nebraska and introduce the third member of the panel, Mark Hunter. Mark?
Hey, thanks, Tim. My name is Mark Hunter. I'm known as the Sales Hunter. Do my work and all really helping companies and people find better prospects that they can close at full price. Wrote the book right there, High Profit Prospecting. Do a lot of speaking, a lot of training, a lot of consulting all over the world. So, hey, I'll kick it back to Koka, who is in Germany.
Yes, I am in Germany today. I have no idea what time it is anywhere in the world at the moment, except for where I'm at right now. So again, thank you both for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this session. We've got a ton of questions. And for all of you that are viewing in, there is a chat box in, I believe it's in the lower right-hand corner of your screens. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, feel free to type those in and we'll get to those. If there's anything that we talk about that you want to get into more detail about, feel free just to put those into the box below and we'll make sure that we answer all of them. So first off, one of the questions that kept coming up is, both of you, Mark and Tim, you work with numerous companies helping them with their sales strategies. As you're talking to these companies, how does collaboration between the teams and other departments within those companies, how much does that really matter?
So I'll jump in first. I think it matters a tremendous amount, Koka. I mean, a real simple example is, let's just take a look at the difference between sales and marketing. Very simple example. If they're not working hand in glove when it comes to your story, in other words, what's your message, what's your narrative, what's your elevator pitch, right? The guys in marketing, they come up with their own little message, they throw it over the transom, the guys in sales get it, they don't buy into it, they don't believe it, and then they start bastardizing it, and that's kind of the beginning of the end. And so I see that as, these are some of the lowest hanging fruits that oftentimes need to be addressed inside of organizations that I'm working with.
Hey, I'll jump in and add two things to that. First of all, sales has got to be driving the bus. One of the problems we get mixed up on is when marketing starts to drive the bus. And it's not to bash marketing. I spent many years on the marketing side of the fence. But sales ultimately owns the relationship with the customer. And that means sales has really got to drive the bus. And that means marketing, it doesn't excuse marketing. They're very involved. But there's another piece in there, and that's the subject matter experts. One of the things that the internet does is bring a tremendous amount of knowledge and insight to the customer, allowing them to make the decision before we really get involved, which means salespeople have to be more willing to bring in other subject matter experts into the sales call process. Why? Because it allows them to distinguish a difference and create a tangible need that goes beyond what a customer may be able to find on the internet or a competitor can bring to the table.
Well, that raises another immediate question. Like, what is that process of bringing in a new subject matter expert? Like, in your experience, how does that happen?
Well, I think you got to know that you're bringing in the subject matter expert only when there's value to be added. I see too many salespeople. Gee, let's create a carpool call. Let's bring 3-4 people in on the sales call. That doesn't do any bit of good at all. What the salesperson has to do is say, what is the value that this person can bring? And then they got to leverage it by making sure, and this is whether it be on a conference call, a video call, in person, whatever, that the customer has their subject matter expert involved. What it does is it allows the salesperson to really vault the selling process to the next level. What does it do? Allow you to close not only that sale, but undoubtedly create more opportunities for additional sales.
Outstanding. Yeah, I do agree with it. And I'm glad that you got into more detail on that. What are the key data points that both of you find, that a salesperson should be looking for when they're generating these new deals?
So I'll jump in first, Koka. There's probably literally dozens of key data points. But way too often I see salespeople today really getting bogged down in the bits, bytes, and bandwidth. They're more interested in the what than the why. And it kind of goes back to play a little bit on what Mark was just talking about. This whole thing about subject matter experts. I love SMEs, but the problem with SMEs is usually the subject is your product or service. And until we learn that, the subject matter should not be product or service, the subject matter should really be a business result. And that the key data points should not be around bits, bytes, and bandwidth. It should not be about the what, it should be about the why. That's when we're going to really start moving away from being a peddler and, for lack of a better term, really trying to position ourselves more as a partner. So it's not so much about a certain box or a certain service or a certain solution as much as, hey guys, what's going on? Okay, now I understand what's going on. Why is this a problem? Why is it important to you? Who else is at risk here? What's at stake? What happens if we don't fix it? I think those are the kinds of conversations I'd love to see more of.
I'm going to run with that for a second, because one of the questions I challenge sales, if you're a sales manager, I'll say, hey, one of the things you want to be asking your salespeople, how many questions did they ask on the last sales call? And again, whether it be on a phone call, video call, in person, even in an email, how many questions did you ask? What's interesting is just what you said, Tim. We get caught up in the bits and the bytes. It still is really H2H. I mean, selling is not B2B or B2C. It's H2H. It's human to human. And what does that allow us to do? It allows us to really get questions being asked, because that's the value we bring to the table. I really could care less how many people I have at the top of the funnel. I want to know how many people are coming out of the bottom of the funnel. That's the measurement I want to go after.
And so I'll take back, Koka, you need to jump in too, bud, because I know you got a lot of experience here. So to Mark's point, as salespeople, you bring value one of two ways. Either you know all the answers or you know the right questions. And I'll guarantee you don't know all the answers. And so what I see happening a lot, and I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to tell you I'm guilty of this as well. Step one is we're not spending enough time pre-call planning. I think oftentimes, we think that by going faster, we're going to be more productive. And so we don't spend that time before each and every call. To Mark's point, whether face-to-face, over the phone, video chat, we don't spend enough time pre-call planning. That's the first sin. And then the second sin is the amount of time that we do spend pre-call planning, most of that is focused on what am I going to say versus what am I going to ask. And the conversation just launches in the traditional show up and throw up, spray and pray. You've heard it a million times. And I physically watch customers and prospects just start to shut down. And I get it, because when a sales rep calls on me and makes it all about them, I start to shut down. I mean, go to a restaurant tonight and walk up to a stranger and introduce yourself and make it all about you. They'll start to shut down. I mean, this is just human interaction 101. And oftentimes, I think we're just not focused on the right result. We're not focused on the right message. And we get lost in the weeds.
So, we were kind of going down this path of data, and really what I'm hearing here is that in most cases, the data really doesn't matter as much as the what the business result is that you're looking for is to using those data points. Is that right?
Well, I'll say the data, that's very important, but what do I do with it? That's really what's important. Just to collect data, just to measure data without having a reason for it, then it truly is a waste of time.
And Mark's spot on. I mean, I could send you a spreadsheet of all of my business metrics, and I can invite you to try to sell me, and you're not going to be very successful. I mean, I got rows and columns of data. There's more data than we could possibly get to. You got to know what data is important, why it's important, and why we're trying to change that data. And to me, I mean, that gets back, Koka. That's why we're in this job. Is we're trying to figure out what the story is. No child says, "Mommy, take me upstairs and share some data with me." Everybody wants the story. What's the story behind the data? And once we get the story, once we get the why behind the what, once we get the emotion, man, now we're just in my experience, we're just having a completely different conversation.
That's an amazing analogy of mom come up and tell me a story about data. So, with kind of riffing off of that for a second, who should own that story? If sales is driving the bus, I mean, in my eyes, my opinion would be that marketing is helping tell that story because they're the ones that, that's their skill set. But should salespeople be developing that story on their own?
I think marketing needs to really contribute to the story, but sales is going to be the one that's going to put the final spin on it for that individual customer. That's the customization, the tailoring. That's going to be the sales. Marketing, they can create the story very well. But here's the key thing: the story has got to evolve the questions. It's got to be the questions.
And Koka, the stories I see though. So I spent a good bit of time doing this executive presentation stuff, and I'll challenge everybody just listening today. Open up your last deck. I'm going to play the great Karnak. Open up your last customer deck, and I'll guarantee you that I shouldn't say probably if I'm going to guarantee, I'll guarantee you that 60% of the first 15 slides are all about you and what you do. Oh, and show me that map with all the little red dots on it where your cities are. Oh, I love that one. That makes me want to buy. I will promise you that 60% of the intro of your deck is all about you. And I have preached this from on high. It's not, the story has to go like this. It's kind of like what's the first part of the story? What is the problem? What is the situation? What is the opportunity? The second part of the story needs to be why. Why are we going to do something about this? And then the third part of the story is, well, this is why I'm the right person. And it gets back to the, it's the emergency room analogy. If you went into an emergency room, right, Koka, you've lost your voice. And so if you find that tomorrow morning you wake up and you're really ill and you've got to go to the emergency room in the morning, do you want that attending physician to come in and pitch you on him? Show up and say, hey, listen, before we get to you, let me tell you a little bit about where I studied, where I interned. Here's where I got my undergrad.
I don't care.
Yeah, you're right. You want to know, hey, what the hell is wrong with me? You want to know the what. Then the second thing you're going to want to know is how. Once you know what's wrong with me, how are you going to make me better? And then last but not least, it's like, well, why are you the right doctor? And quite frankly, I think of a sales rep in a marketing organization does a great job of figuring out what's wrong and how they're going to fix it. The why doesn't become important because you are now in their space.
Hey, I'm going to run with that a step further. Here's a line I like to use. The best presentation ever made is the presentation never given. Skip the presentation. It's all about a discussion, anchored with questions.
Ditto.
Outstanding. Tim, you and I had a chance to chat a little bit before this session, and you had mentioned that there was this demand gen report that you were familiar with. And according to that report, it was, I think I have it written down here, 95% of buyers choose a solution provider to provide them with ample content that helps them navigate through this stage of the buying process. And yet most salespeople seem to struggle with delivering that value. So what are some of those obstacles preventing reps from creating more meaningful conversations, since we're in this idea of storytelling?
So great question, Koka, and it's going to sound like a broken record. But I think what prevents us from creating more meaningful conversations is that we're talking too much and we're not listening enough. The 95% of buyers choose a solution because the rep provided them with ample content to navigate through each stage of the buying process. Most reps show up and they're not really worried about the buying process. They're focused too much on their selling process. And I've never understood that. We as an organization, we're going to design a selling process. And then I'm going to ask you, Mr. Prospect, to kind of, you're going to dance to my band. I just think it works a hell of a lot better when you say, look, you guys got a buying process. And if you do, help me understand what that looks like. And if you don't have a buying process, if it's okay, I'll share with you what other clients in this situation have used as a buying process. But I want to dance to your band. I want to listen to your music. I'm a simple guy. I just think it's a heck of a lot easier to pull a rope than it is to push a rope. And if you're not creating that kind of meaningful conversation, you're going to feel like you're pushing a rope.
That comes back to this whole piece that really what our objective is to get the customer to invest. I look at it as I don't want to be selling and I don't want the customer to buy. What I do want is I want them to invest because they're seeing a outcome, a value that they're going to achieve. And the investment they're going to make with me is purely to allow them to achieve that outcome. But I don't know what that outcome is until I get into that dialogue, that deep, deep dive with them. And I think, Tim, you are spot on. We got to sit back and just ask. You know what's interesting is the best questions are the short questions. Why? How? Give me another example. I love that. And I love when I'm in a sales call, in a sales situation where the salesperson asks the customer a question and the customer can't answer it and the salesperson can't answer it. To me, that's a great situation. What does that do? It creates dialogue, creates discussion. To me, that's perfect. That's going to allow us to get to a much deeper level with every customer.
Yeah, because then you're ultimately solving a problem together as opposed to, just trying to solve a solution that they may not even know about.
Well, I know you've seen that a lot, Koka. I mean, you see that a lot in the customers you work with.
Well, and then it goes back, guys, and I think the viewers are going to smile, but think of the questions that are getting asked during sales calls. Who's involved in the decision-making process? What's the budget look like? How soon are you looking to make a change? Asking those kinds of questions may have value for you, the salesperson. They have absolutely zero value for the prospect. They have zero value for the customer. Customer already knows this stuff. And quite frankly, when a sales rep starts asking me those kinds of questions, it feels like he's just going to try to sell me something. He's going to use that data to manipulate me to do something I don't want to do. So instead of asking these mind-numbing questions about, need, budget, time frame, and fit, why don't we ask some thought-provoking questions? Why don't we ask questions nobody else in our industry is asking? And to Mark's point, ask questions that the customer says, damn, you know what? That's a good, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked us that before. We'll have to get back to you on that. When you start creating that kind of positive tension, you're absolutely going to blow away the last guy that just stopped by to check in.
I love the check-in. That's my all-time favorite of all. When we talk about like bad behaviors of salespeople, the check-in is the one that is my go-to every time.
Yeah. Oh no, please! You mean I shouldn't be putting that at the top of all my prospecting emails? Oh boy, what have I been doing wrong?
Well,
now
See, typically though, guys, let me take it to Rev 2.0. I typically just check in because I want to know what keeps them up at night, and I find that to be a winning combination today.
I'm glad your camera does not work.
Me too.
It's awesome. Mark, question for you. So, how do salespeople up their game if the customer already knows what they want to buy?
Well, that comes back to just being able to be confident enough to be asking more questions. We've been going down this trail, but I always say the two money words I want the customer to say, great question. Because when that customer says, great question, what does that do? That forces them to go back and get dialogue from other people, you to get the more dialogue. That, to me, if all I'm doing is bringing customers stuff that they can find out on the internet, boy, am I sitting there wasting my time. I mean, think about that. There's no reason for me to be there. I got to be asking deeper questions. But I'll tell you what, salespeople don't go down that road until they're confident. They're confident that it's okay if I don't know everything. But what does it do? It allows me the ability to have a follow-up conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, besides the questions piece, my mantra or the way that I was raised in sales was this idea that you have to lead with insights. So we kind of danced around this concept of you can't be the same sales guy checking in or sounding like every other salesperson that's just trying to pitch, bits and bytes, as you had put it. But you have to be able to come to the table with an insight or a layer of insights that explains something to this buyer that they are not paying attention to because they're usually in their own bubble. If it's, in my world at Hootsuite now, like the idea that we can go to a telco company and say, here's what's going on with your business. Well, there's a good chance they may already know this, right? Because they're monitoring their own health. But they don't know what the competitive landscape looks like because that's something that most companies are having issues with. So if we lead with those insights and we say, here's how you are, and here's how the 5 people around you are doing, and this is how we can help you achieve whatever that goal is of beating these guys out, that usually gets people to answer questions in a much more forthcoming manner because they know they need to get above their competitors.
You just mentioned something there, Koka, that was so powerful. You talking with telcos, because really where we bring the value is when we begin to really look at our customer's customer. telcos, they look at others, but who are their customers? Where are they going? That's to me, when I'm in that level of discussion, then I'm bringing real value to my customers.
And Koka, I just want to go back and kind of highlight what you just said, because I think it's very powerful. I wouldn't want people to listen to this session and feel that the answer is just asking questions. I mean, that's a very, very powerful skill, but it's probably just one leg of the three-legged stool. To your point, Koka, if you don't start with some sort of insights, you know, you're not leading with any kind of credibility at all. So when you show up and you go, hey, listen, I mean, if you just look at how, you know, watch the news shows on Sundays, right? They never just ask a question. There's always context around, hey, given the current situation here and what's going on there, we've noticed this. And so I'd like to ask you the following question. Just by putting that context, just by wrapping in insights, it makes you smarter, and it makes the question easier for me to answer. And then the third leg of the stool, which we haven't touched on, is this ability to listen and to listen to understand versus what we all tend to do, or at least what I tend to do. I don't listen to understand. I'm listening to interrupt, because I'm like, dude, take a breath. Because the minute you take a breath, I'm going to blow you away with something really funny or something really insightful. And as reps, we got to stop spilling all our candy in the lobby. Listen, be comfortable with silence, and really challenge yourself to understand what's being said versus trying to just jump back in with new insights.
Yeah, I think, you know, the idea of listening as a salesperson is probably one of the most under-taught values or processes in any sales training that I've ever been accustomed to. Is that the idea that you have to be able to listen, because that's where you're going to find out what you really should be talking about.
It doesn't happen near enough, and it's not just in sales, Koka. I think
it's in life. In general.
You know, it's a skill that I've got adult kids, and that's something I tried to teach them. And it's hard because we're all distracted. We all have short attention spans. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, the most fascinating person in the room is yourself. And you got to.
I feel that way.
You got to get over yourself, because until you get over yourself, you're going to be pushing a rope again.
Yeah. We got a question from the viewers. So Bill asked the question: What would be the best starting point for sales leaders to enable a customer-centric sales process at scale?
Mr. Hunter, I'm going to kick this to you.
Yeah, you know, what I always start off with is what's happened. What is the critical issue in the industry? Just like what you said, Tim, in terms of news shows. They always have a question, but they frame it. What I like doing is at the top of the funnel, I'm gonna pose to this prospect, what is this industry issue that I can share, that I've got some insights on, and I'm gaining their opinion. And I found it does two things. One, first of all, you got to know something about the industry you're calling into. B, it tells the person you're calling, and however you're calling them, however you're reaching out to them, maybe by way of social media, it may be, and I just did this the other day. There was a person I was trying to reach, and I sent them a LinkedIn message, shared with them an insight regarding an industry, and asked for their opinion. What did it do? I got a great response, and I'm in a great dialogue with this person, all by way of LinkedIn messaging. So to me, it demonstrates value to the prospect, to the customer. Tim?
Well, and as I look at this, and I've had a chance to think about this, I think Mark answers spot on. But Koka and Mark, you know, when I look at this, you know, so Bill, let's just try to put this in action. So I'd say, hey, Bill, so when you say customer-centric sales process, what does that mean to you? What does that look to you? When you say you want to make it at scale, tell me, what does scale mean? Because does scale mean 3, 30, 300, or 3,000? Why are you trying to accomplish that, Bill? What's at risk? What are you trying to move forward? You know, so it's really trying to understand, why in the world is Bill asking us this question? And what do all these words inside his question mean? Because, I mean, it's a wonderful question, but if you ask 10 leaders, what does a customer-centric sales process look like? You're going to get 10 different answers. And so it goes back to, Bill, you know, we got to dive deeper, man. Tell me more about why you're asking. What's going on? What do these words mean to you? And it's engaging at that deeper level.
Yeah, and that then segues perfectly into another question, is, you know, for you, Tim, is this idea of, you know, being obsessed with our customers is often talked about. It's one of those things that, you know, the customer-centric sale, but it's not always implemented. So, you know, what gets in the way of that? And what are some of those practical tips on how we can start focusing that energy for a sales organization?
So what gets in the way has been getting in the way for thousands of years. It's ego and pride. And we've talked about it, and it's worth continuing to talk about. It's not about us. It's got to be about them. Quit talking about you. Start learning about them. If you want to truly be obsessed with your customers, then think about high school. You were obsessed with little Susie, and you wanted to take her to the prom. How would you go about being obsessed with somebody? You wouldn't lead with ego. You wouldn't lead with pride. You wouldn't lead with how brilliant you were. You'd put those things aside, and you would try to connect on a more meaningful level. And you'd be willing to listen, and you'd be willing to probe, and you'd be comfortable with silence. And I think these are the kinds of just blocking and tackling skills that we're not really teaching our reps, reinforcing our reps, encouraging our reps to engage with. And that's just my opinion. I don't have any research to back that up, but thousands of sales calls every year. That's what I'm seeing in the trenches.
Well, and I'm gonna add to that really this is where the data, the power of the internet and social media and all of these tools really come into play. Are we leveraging them in a manner? In my own company, we have various tools in place that allow us to very much monitor what's happening with very specific customers that we're either doing business with or prospects that we're chasing. What does that allow us to do? It allows me to have a much more intelligent phone call with them. When I call them up, it allows me to send a much more engaging email. It just allows my salesperson to have much better dialogue. It's using those tools and resources out there. Because at the end of the day, I think the number one resource we're challenged with is our own time. And I've got to leverage every tool possible to help me use my time effectively.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question to that, but I want to kind of transition off of what you just said. And I've been saying, for a while now that as a salesperson, you need to provide value in excess of whatever it is you're asking for in return. If you're selling a $10,000 product, you need to be able to provide value to that buyer that is $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth, where they feel like they're getting this product for a steal, right? And that resonates because salespeople get that, like they have to add value, but they're not practicing that when it comes to asking for people's time. And before you can ask for 15, 20 minutes on the phone or even a personal meeting with somebody, you have to be able to provide value in excess of whatever it is that person is going to be getting out of that meeting. So that when you say, hey, do you have 15 minutes to get on the phone? They're going to be raising their hand saying, yes, I'll give you a half an hour. And, I think that, it's not a trait that can, I guess, necessarily be taught overnight, but I do believe it can be taught to teach salespeople how to basically become magnets by providing a ton of value.
I think that's you're on to something there, Coco. One of the very first sales managers I had years ago trapped me with, do your customers value you? And it's like, oh yeah, my customers love me. I'm a great sales rep. And he said, how many of your customers would be willing to pay you to make a sales call on them? And I was like, why would they pay me to make a sales call? And it's like, well, because if you were truly valuable, your customers would be willing to cut you a check to come spend time with you. And so to your point, it's all part of the dance. And so as you're approaching a new customer, if it's, hey, I'm checking in, had like 10 minutes on your calendar to talk all about me, we, and us. Hey, we've got this new widget. Hey, would you be willing to jump on a screen share? No. What we need to be doing when we're romancing the customer is, hey, here's some industry insights. Here's some case studies. Here's some other success stories. This is what we're seeing in other companies like yours. It's providing those insights. It's providing that experience and expertise that eventually, my experience is that prospect says, damn, this Koka guy, he's got his thumb on what's going on. It might be worth spending 10 minutes because you're no longer approaching it from, I want to sell you something, as much as you're approaching it from, hey, I want to share some insights and then see where the conversation goes from there.
I'll share one more piece. It's how many times does the customer ask you, the salesperson, questions about things that you don't have any knowledge of from a sales standpoint? Now think about this. A customer is not going to ask a salesperson that unless they have a really high degree of confidence and competency in who they are dealing with from a salesperson. That's when you say, you know what? Wow, now I've reached that level.
All right, we got one last question from the audience here, and it's from Bill. What would be the best starting point for sales leaders to enable the customers? Oh, hold on, I just read that one. Next question. What's the role of education in enabling the shift in mindset for this customer-centric model?
Well, I think
how important is education in it?
So I think the role of education is important, Bill, but I think you got to do more than educate. I think it's more of an immersion. Because we all know, when you sit salespeople in a room for 8 hours or 2 days, not much of that's going to stick. And I get that. I mean, if I was going to go take a golf lesson this weekend, I mean, if the pro would sit there and talk to me for 58 minutes and then let me hit balls for 2, I'd get very frustrated. I would learn nothing. So I think education's part of the building block, but I really think we as sales leaders need to look more at immersion, and immersion is taking that information, taking it into the field, getting dirty, getting beat up, getting bruised, and then coming back and learning and making it more of an iterative process versus, hey, go read this whole book and now God bless you, you got it figured out, because that just doesn't work.
What we're talking about here is a culture. It has to be the culture of the organization, customer-centric. That's not giving away the farm, but that's customer-centric in terms of really understanding everything about why that customer does what they do and how you're going to help them get to the next level.
I agree. I think that reinforcement is one of the things that is overlooked time and time again when it comes to training, where you'll hire a sales trainer to come in, or a trainer for anything, and they spend an hour, a couple hours, sometimes a full day in a workshop, and that's the last you ever hear from them. And you're not going to retain all of that. There has to be follow-ups. There needs to be check-ins on a regular basis. It needs to be, you need to invest in your sales team in a way that is going to, you're playing the long game. And if you play the long game with a great trainer, or with a good coach, so to speak, you're going to win. And I think this idea of, let's spend a couple $1,000s, even though they're not they're the next tier down, but this guy's going to come in for a day and just get these guys all jazzed up, like that isn't going to answer your questions. That isn't going to solve your problems. It's going to solve them for maybe a week, and after that, they're going to go right back to their old habits. It takes reinforcement. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get built into that.
I always tell customers, Koka, there's nothing worse than energized incompetence,
which runs rampant in this industry.
Drop the microphone.
Yes, absolutely. So, because we're supposed to be talking about like the modern salesperson, one thing that I do want to hear from both of you is that because you talk to so many different companies, and you are dealing with sales teams across multiple industries in many cases, what if you're going to boil down, like, what does a modern sales team look like now? How would you answer that for the audience?
That's a really good question, Koka. That's actually kind of a thought-provoking question. I think a modern sales team now, this may surprise you, probably doesn't look radically different from a modern sales team 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And what I mean by that is, I think in sales, this is again, the Tim Wackel school of thinking. To be great at sales, I think it's about timeless principles. It's about never changing principles. We've talked about those today. And the sales team that's successful is taking those never changing principles and has successfully learned how to apply them to an ever changing environment. So when I look at the team and the skill set of the team and what's important to them, how they engage, how they interact, I think those things haven't changed. What's changed is the access to information. What's changed is the technology. What's changed is the complexity. What's changed is the amount of competition we've got. What's changed is how smart the buyer is before they ever pick up the phone or send us an email. So, the playing field has changed, but the skills to be good at the game, I don't believe have really changed that much in the last 25 years.
I'll add 2 quick things. The only thing that's changed is the communication tools that we use, because it's still one-to-one, and B, the added pressure on time. Everything is scaled just that much faster.
Outstanding. Great answers from both of you. So again, Mark, Tim, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to be on this. I know that the team over at Sales for Life, the one they're hosting this digital growth con, for you speaking on this idea of the skills of the modern sales team. So again, thank you both for your time, and to all of you who attended this. I hope that these answered some questions. If not, feel free to connect with any of us. I know that between Tim and Mark and myself, we're very open networkers. So you can find us on basically every social channel out there. There's follow-up questions. Feel free to let us know, and we will respond to you. So with that being said, thank you all and have a great rest of your day.